So your initial oral board interview, let's discuss that, Jeff.
You bet. When you think about an oral board interview, there's going to be some basic questions that are asked. And again, I mentioned it earlier in the briefing, but the bottom line is you need to tell your personal story. Make it interesting for your assessors and tell it what it's all about. I'll give an example. When I started with the Nevada Fire Protection District, I was the director of training and emergency medical services, and I was detailed for 2 weeks to the city of Berkeley, and we did 10 interviews a day for 2 weeks. So we looked at thousands of candidates, and there were several oral boards going on at the same time. And after a while, it became very repetitive, and after a while, it became very boring, and frankly, we just needed that personal touch. I could almost close my eyes and tell you what someone was going to be able to tell me because there's standard answers to standard questions. The bottom line is what we're really trying to do is to try and learn a little bit about you, learn about your commitment to public safety, learn how you would treat our community and our citizens, and learn how you would get along with your coworkers. And, frankly, I think that is one of the biggest things that we look at. We work in a very closed network. You're assigned to an engine, truck, medic unit, or specialized unit. And the bottom line is you're going to spend 24 to 48 hours or more, depending on assignments, with them. And you need to be able to get along. I think that's really a pretty important thing that we're looking at. So we're trying to assess that and determine, can you fit in? Now, the fire service is very, very diverse today. There's no question about that. But, we all still have the basic mission. There's people are in need. They dial the 911 system. We respond with engines, trucks, medic units, specialized units to try and mitigate your emergency. So the bottom line is it's teamwork, it's following instructions, and it's getting along day to day. I can share with you that during my period of time as the training officer, we had a pretty large turnover rate, and it wasn't really ever based mostly on manipulative skills. It was based on attitudes and how you treated the general public. And when I look back at all the candidates that were sent down the road during my period of time as the training officer and then ultimately as the personnel officer, it was really based on attitudes, how you treated the community. It wasn't necessarily that you had poor firefighting skills or you had poor medic skills. It was you had poor customer service skills. So again, we take a role in that as an agency, or at least that was always my belief, that, there's prescriptions that we can write that would allow us to be able to give you the additional training because, we had a part of that role ourselves. If you failed, we as an organization failed a bit unless you did something egregious. So the bottom line I would suggest to you is that during this oral board process, we're trying to get to know you. It's uptight time for you. You're nervous about it. We want you to be able to relax and let us see the real you. We want to reflect our communities when we do hiring these days. Eddie, what do you think?
Great. I totally agree with your points. And one of the things for me that I notice in a lot of candidates is, is the inability to answer some basic questions. And I'll give you an example, and that is, why do you want to be a firefighter? And I can't tell you how many people can't answer that question from the heart, right? And that's to Jeff's point, that's what we're looking for. We're looking for people that are genuine, that are hungry, that are smart, right? But they can articulate, really put something in their own words without a canned answer, and that means everything. So I would encourage you, if you haven't practiced, if you haven't thought about those basic things, I can tell you right now, I don't care which department you're going to apply for, you're going to be asked, why do you want to be a firefighter? You're going to be asked, tell me a little bit about yourself. You're going to be asked, what have you done to prepare yourself for this position? Those are some, you can Google this, you can look this up on YouTube. There's a lot of different ways that you can prepare for it, but make sure that you really think about these answers. Another tip is make sure that you draw parallels between whatever your personal and professional history is, right? And so what I mean by that is draw parallels to how it relates to the job of firefighter. I'll have candidates that come to me and say, I don't know where to get started. I've never been a firefighter. Well, I mean, I've never been, a chief until you get to that position, right? And so we can all kind of say that, but you prepare, right? You prepare, and then you draw parallels. So, for example, if somebody has a background in construction, they might not know how that's relatable to the fire department. Well, obviously, we need to know how buildings go up so we know how they're going to come down, right? And so once people, you kind of see the light bulb come on in these candidates when they're like, oh, wow. And then you start making your answers very, very relatable to the job of firefighter. So I would encourage you to kind of think about some of those things. It starts with looking at your resume. It starts with kind of doing these, practice, right? And imagine yourself in front of that oral board and being asked some of these questions, and think about your training, education, and your professional work history, and how is that relatable? Working at Subway, working at McDonald's, guess what? It's customer service, right? All these little things, the military, lots of parallels between the military and the fire service. So my point is don't sell yourself short just because you might not have a lot of experience in the fire service. Instead, just speak highly of what you do have, right? And make the other side of that table see that, and they're going to pick up on that.
And the reality is there's a lot of opportunities for you. You ought to be videoing yourself. You ought to be making eye contact. You should be dressed appropriately. You can never be too formal in an oral board scenario. So dress formally, have resumes prepared. Whether they accept them or not is okay. It's just that you are prepared there. So the bottom line really is there's a lot of preparatory work that you can do to make yourself different than the other candidate. You should always be early. There's nothing worse than having somebody show up late, because we are in a business where seconds count. And the bottom line is, if you can't show up on time for a job interview, how am I confident to know that you'll have the ability to be able to be on that apparatus when we pull out the door? So there's a lot of parallels that we're looking for there, and there's a lot of preparatory work that you can do to be able to make yourself more viable. Everybody's got phones today. You can record yourself. You can record your answers, and you can be comfortable with that. I don't want you to be necessarily rehearsed like you're a robot, but you ought to be comfortable in being able to share why it's so important for you to be able to get this position, what makes you different than the other 100 candidates.